Quiet now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh. Kim, you're muted.
Well, that's not a good way to start on the show. Come on now.
Or is this train wreck to start?
Mark's going to be like, you know, it went great except for that whole part at the beginning where you were muted.
And right before show, we're like,
everyone.
we got this planned out. Everything's going to be cool. We got this all lined up. Nope.
It's going to be smooth sailing. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim McAllister in for Mark Thompson. I have Tony alongside me here, and it is going to be a great, big, beautiful show today on the Mark Thompson Show. We've got David Katz to kick it off. iHeart Radio and TV political analyst Gary Dietrich will be here. I wanted to talk Greenland with him because I don't know if you guys saw the video that Trump made about Greenland, and Vance was just there. So we'll talk Greenland with Gary Dietrich. And then Mark Thompson has left us a fascinating conversation with author and progressive political talk show host Thom Hartman. And so we'll have that in the second hour for you as well. That's a conversation you won't want to miss. Tony is here with me today. He's got his brand new band t-shirt on.
Recovering from a show.
He's rocking it today.
It was good. Dancing and down. Come on. It was good.
Mark Thompson is off, so Mark's Madness takes a little break today, which is okay. It'll be back on Wednesday. It's still in the ongoing process. We're just going to push the pause button on Mark's Madness, and Mark will be back on Wednesday. So it's still going on. It's just a touch delayed, Mark's Madness. And I don't know, Tony, I've got my Coachella Valley coffee. It didn't help me, my tea. I'm drinking the tea. Mark loves the coffee. I love the tea. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. That's the website. And they really do so much right, I have to tell you, from fresh beans, from describing the roast and exactly the taste of it on the website. I love that they do this for the teas and for the coffee, so you know exactly what you're getting into. They support women-owned farms. Again, just a great company. And it really is a little bit of heaven in your Mark Thompson Show coffee mug. 10% off is yours just for being here on the Mark Thompson Show. All you have to do is type in at the checkout code MARK-T, no spaces, MARK-T, 10% off. And I know you will enjoy it. So there you go. The weekend brought us word that President Trump is serious about a third term. He'd been joking around about it until now. He says he's serious about it. That had me pretty perplexed over the weekend because it seemed pretty unconstitutional to me. And I had a million questions for former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney David Katz. So I called upon him. He's happy, very happy to lay it all out in this conversation.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked. I'm Kim McAllister, filling in for Mark Thompson. And over the weekend, I had so many questions. There was legal story after legal story popping up. I don't know if you guys saw this one about Donald Trump finally admitting that he is serious about a possible third term, because up until now it's been kind of joke, ha, elbow. And now he says he's not joking about this. He really thinks that this might be a possibility. So I saw this story and I started thinking about all the ways that seem unconstitutional, and then all the ways how possibly MAGA might be able to find a loophole. And then I saw a story about Trump making changes to our elections and whether that's lawful. And then the Wisconsin story with Musk doling out cash. And I thought, I have so many legal stories that I just cannot wait until Thursday to talk to my favorite lawyer, my favorite former federal prosecutor turned defense attorney. You've heard him across the globe. I hope that if I ever got in real trouble, I'd be able to afford him, but probably not. He is the amazing David Katz. David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you. Normally I'm on Thursday at noon, but great to be on with you for this Monday. There's so much legal news, right?
There's so much legal news. So you heard about this Trump thinking he's serious now about a third term. And so I dragged out I have a little pocket constitution, and I was looking at the 22nd Amendment. And here it is, David Katz, because Trump says he means this. He thinks this is serious. The Constitution reads, "No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once." So if someone died or left office and you served 2 years of their term, that counts, right? Then you can only be elected once more, is how I read that. It doesn't apply to anyone who was president when this article was proposed by Congress or when it was ratified. So it seems pretty clear to me you can only serve 2 terms, even if one of those terms is only a partial term. Is it as cut and dry as I think it is?
Trump cannot run for president a third time. That much is clear. They'd have to do some kind of loophole or some kind of, prestidigitation, some clever thing, which we can get into in a minute. But there's a little history. There's FDR, who was the president for over 12 years, and he was elected 4 times, and then he died in office during World War II. And so the idea was that he had such an advantage when he ran that they said, no incumbent should have that advantage of running more than twice. So in that sense, I mean, there's some philosophy, there's some argument that Trump could possibly make that he's not that guy who ran over and over again, that he had this discontinuous, this interrupted period. But the Constitution doesn't say that. The 22nd Amendment doesn't say that. And so that would fail in the courts. And the other part of it, which is interesting, is LBJ. So LBJ becomes president when JFK is assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. So by the time that LBJ ran in November 64, he was that person who had not served more than 2 years of JFK's term. That's why there was a question whether he would run in 68. And everyone agreed he could have won. He could have run in 68. He decided famously in March 1968 not to run for president again, but he could have. That's that somewhat confusing language in there. So LBJ could have served as president for 9 years and change. But if JFK had been assassinated, let's say 2 years earlier, and LBJ had finished his term, then he couldn't have served for 11 years. That's this kind of confusing thing in there. But there's no question, to answer your question, that Trump cannot serve, or he cannot run a third time unless he got the Constitution amended. That's not going to happen. That requires, among other things, 3/4 of the states. There is no way that 3/4 of the states would vote for such a constitutional amendment. So the way that I think that he would try to do it, what he has in mind, is to have Vance or maybe Ivanka Trump run, and he would run as vice president. Then he would not be a person who was elected president 3 times. And then he would try to have an agreement with them. And I think this would be known to the voters that this was the loophole. This was the clever way he thought to get around the Constitution. He would not be elected anything but vice president. And then the deal would be that they would step aside and let him serve. Now, once somebody's president of the United States, as Biden showed us, they don't really want to step aside. They don't want to step aside after 1 term, and they sure don't want to step aside after a week or a month. But I mean, the idea was that Vance is so obedient and would presumably get so much money and so much benefit from this guy. I think it was Thiel who supported him and gave him all that huge money so he could be a senator from Ohio in the first place. He gets so much money from Musk that they would make it worth Vance's while, and Vance really would step aside and say, no, I'm going to step aside and let my vice president. It's hard to believe that the voters would ever go for such an obvious sham, but they elected Trump this time. So a lot of people who predicted they wouldn't elect him this time, this could never happen. It happened. So I think that's what Trump has in mind.
But it's so unconstitutional that I want to believe, and perhaps I'm naive here, I want to believe that whether you're a Trump voter or not, it's so egregiously unconstitutional to have the same person, even in kind of an unofficial way, serving that third term, that the voters wouldn't go for that.
It's hard to believe the voters would go for that. There's some history in the states where there are term limits, where governors have had their wife run for governor. And then the male, it's always been a man and a woman, I think, so far in American history. The male governor who's popular but can't run again because of term limits, like they can't be governor more than twice, just like Trump can't be president more than twice, can't run for president more than 2 times. They've done that. And then the idea is that, the little lady just lets the male governor that people know, wink, wink, they're really voting for when they vote for the wife of the popular male governor. But, but the ironic thing about it is that who would be the 2 likely suspects? The likely suspect would be Melania. She wasn't born in the United States. That wouldn't work. The Southern governor's old time strategy, that wouldn't work with Melania. It also wouldn't work with Musk. One reason that Musk is kind of safe for Trump, and as he's actually said, I'm not worried about it. He wasn't born in the United States.
Right.
So I don't think we're going to see Musk running against Vance one of these days in the future. But I think that's what he has in mind. Of course, what also terrifies people is that he has in mind martial law. He has in mind serving in 2028, not because he wins any election whatsoever, but he's found some excuse to declare martial law. He somehow invoked the Insurrection Act. Right. He's had his little timid, cowardly Republican senators all go along with this. And the Democrats and everybody else in the country with common sense would be screaming and yelling like you are right now. This is unconstitutional. What are you talking about? Where's this insurrection? What's your basis for the Insurrection Act? And people are also scared that, of course, Milley, when he was head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, wouldn't have stood for anything like that. By the way, they found a pretext to fire the current Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so you're really worried that there'd be a malleable military, a go-along military, and that they would find an excuse. And so that would be the way that he would serve in 2028. But I got to believe America is not about to allow even these Republican senators, well, they'll stop at something. And I think what they'll stop at, if not anything else, is not allow him to assert the Insurrection Act. I don't think there'd be any insurrection that's worthy of it. People will demonstrate peacefully. People who do violent things, like the people who attack violently Tesla, the people who burn Tesla charging stations, everyone agrees they should be prosecuted. But that's not an insurrection. I mean, we had the Weather Underground, right? That wasn't in the late 60s, early 70s. That wasn't an insurrection that challenged the country any more than some Tesla terrorist challenges the country law and order, to the extent that there would be an invocation of the Insurrection Act. But I think that's what people are worried about. The constitutional amendment, changing it, that won't work, Kim. There's no way in the world that would work for Trump.
Well, they say, David, that they're going to convene a constitutional convention to look at amendments. But it was my understanding that constitutional amendments take years for all the states to finally ratify.
What they're talking about is a think tank, but a real constitutional convention has all of these protections. So they would never have any power unless, this huge majority of Congress said there should be a constitutional convention to consider whether to change the 22nd Amendment. We have had amendments to the Constitution without having a constitutional convention. The Senate and the House both approve it by a supermajority. It then goes for ratification to the states. And then you need 3/4 of the states. You're not going to get 3/4 of the states by 2028 to say, wow, this is a great idea. Let's have Trump run for a 3rd term. The other joke is that if somehow they ever got this through, we'd have Obama again.
Wow. You know what? I think Democrats would say on principle, no, we wouldn't. We'd be able to find someone else because we disagree with right. Stamping on the Constitution in such a way.
But that was a joke, that it would, if somebody could run for a 3rd term, Obama would be him.
Yes. Let's go to this other thing that happened this weekend, which is that Trump made some changes via an executive order to the election system. And a lot of people are upset because they're saying that what he did illegally takes power away from the states. He will require proof of citizenship to register as a voter. election day return deadlines for mailed ballots. And there are election officials and state attorneys general and legal experts that saying this is all going to bring legal challenges because you can't take election power away from states like this.
We can do those one at a time. But
Yeah.
the overall view is that I don't think it's going to be worth the paper it's printed on. Of course, one of the things with Trump is to be a disruptor, to own the libs, to drive people with common sense crazy. And then when they go crazy because what he's doing is so in violation of the Constitution and the rule of law, then to say they have Trump derangement syndrome, it might be better called love of the Constitution and common sense syndrome. We have a very unique system in the United States. We don't have centralized federal elections. We have elections state by state, including for president. And so you have to go through all of these arcane state-based rules, and then someone comes out the winner. And then, like you see on AP, it used to be late at night on election day. Now it's usually a day or two later. You see Pennsylvania votes for Obama, or Illinois votes for Clinton. And then you see that with Florida went the nation, right? We have expressions like that. Well, with Florida went the nation, or with Ohio went the election. What we mean is that the candidate for president has complied with all of the rules and regulations of the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio has counted the vote in Ohio, and Ohio has certified, whoever it is, Kennedy, Nixon, the winner, Trump, Biden, the winner. And so there's really a small federal role in elections. Of course, Trump has tried to take this giant footprint of the federal government on state elections, including state elections for federal office. So all of these states, or not all, but many of the states and the state attorneys general and the state secretaries of state are going to file lawsuits basically saying, we control the elections in this state, not the federal government. And whatever Trump just did is completely null and void in my state. Now, would some of the red states not challenge it? I think even the red states would challenge it because they have some self-respect and some idea that the states make the state rules. And at some point, this abdication to a federal official, even if it's Trump, I think will be too much for the red states. But let's go through them one at a time. Now, you mentioned some of the things that he's talking about maybe changing, Kim.
Right. One is to require proof of citizenship when you register to vote.
So each state determines what proof is necessary. There's also a real constitutional challenge because there's two problems. People's sort of rah reaction, like if you're just sitting around in a bar, talking to a bunch of guys, yeah, everybody should have to show that they're a citizen.
Sure.
There are a lot of people, think of the dynamics of trying to prove, putting the burden on the voter that the voter is a citizen. There's basically only one of two ways to do that under most of these really strict rules. One is to show a passport. Less than half of Americans have a passport. The other way is to show a birth certificate. That means you have to go get a hold of your birth certificate. You can be an older person, you can be a disabled person. The other problem with finding a birth certificate that matches your name is that many women still, but especially women, have traditionally taken their husband's surname. So they're going to have a birth certificate that says Mary Smith, but their current name is Mary Jones. That person's going to have a lot of trouble with the states where you have to produce either a passport or a birth certificate, producing a birth certificate that backs up her claim that Mary Jones, now her married name, should be allowed to vote. That is a real thing that affects millions of people. And the other thing is that these states scrutinize very much who actually votes, Kim. So they look through and make sure that, they check the rolls. Sometimes they overcheck the rolls. They delete people who shouldn't be deleted. But they have all the means in the world to check and to make sure that this 85-year-old person or this disabled person is indeed a citizen, has a right to vote. But to put the burden on the 85-year-old person to go show up at some election office somewhere and to produce documentation that proves that the person's a citizen, they may have voted since they were 25 years old, or to make the disabled person go down there, it really is unfair. The states don't think it makes any sense. And of course, the reality for Trump is that he knows that the older people, the disabled people, a lot of the women, those aren't his voters. His voters tend to be tend to be, there are of course some exceptions, but tend statistically not to be women. They tend not to be even older people now. And with what he has in mind for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, he figures the next time around the older people surely won't be voting for him. And so he figures that all of those people who'd have to show proof of citizenship, it's not that he's doing anything about non-citizens voting, it's that he's doing something about people who don't like Trump voting and making it a real hassle and headache for them to produce documents and to fulfill this burden. So that I don't think is going anywhere, but it's a good talking point for him and the MAGA base and the guys who just don't think about it at all and think, rah, rah, I don't want non-citizens voting.
You got me really thinking about how I could prove that I'm the same person on my birth certificate, because my married name and my maiden name are different. So how do I show that I'm the same Kim McAllister on my birth certificate as my married name on my driver's license? How do I prove that I'm that same person?
You'd be disenfranchised, what was the other one that you were talking about he wants to do?
Those were the two main ones, I think. Yeah, the election day return deadline for mail-in ballots.
He has no power over that. The Constitution says that the time, place, and manner of voting shall be determined by the states. If a state, and this is totally fair, there's no way this is an official stamp. So you have to have sent in your ballot by election day, no monkey business. Okay. And then the mail is just logical, takes a couple of days to actually send it to the voting center. And so if you voted by election day, then the states give you 5 days for it to be received, 7 days for it to be received. But Trump also knows that the people who actually go in and vote in the booth, right, are better for him than the mail-in people. That's kind of worked out. He's gotten some mail-in people back this last time. But you remember in 2020 when Biden won, the mail-in vote, the people who were really scared about COVID and wanted to mail in their ballot, they broke for Biden. And he figures in the future, Trump figures he wants for himself and the Republicans the people who go into the voting booth, not the people who are mailing in. And then, the head of the post office just quit. They want to take over the post office. They have in mind that the Trump folks have in mind making it very hard to vote by mail by all sorts of nefarious means.
So let's move to Wisconsin, where our friend Elon Musk over the weekend popped up, spoke to a couple thousand people, saying that this is very important. This whole race for the spot on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, so important that he had to be there in person and don his cheese head. He said,
I've proudly worn a cheese head. My wife is from Wisconsin. We have both proudly worn cheese heads. It disgraces the cheese head symbol everywhere to have it on this multi-billionaire's head who's trying to destroy with chaos the federal government employees. But continue, please.
So he says this race comes down to the future of our civilization. So drama much, but he says it's the issue of redrawing congressional maps. It's on the table, very important. So he's offering money. And I guess a couple of lower courts said, we're not going to take this case. And then the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, we're not going to take this case. So out Trump comes with $2 million checks, two $1 million checks, giving them to voters. The Democrat who brought the lawsuit says in Wisconsin, it's illegal to pay people to participate in an election. So what he's doing here is illegal, but the courts won't take the case. And I'm so confused.
Okay. Legally, I think that the Democrats don't have the better of this fight. And, I try to give my legal opinion, not right, not left, but right, not wrong. The background of this one is that you're not allowed to have a lottery, which was the issue in Pennsylvania. He had a lottery during the Trump Biden contest in 2024. And he said that people who signed a paper that said they believed in the First and Second Amendment were going to be eligible to get $1 million. And then the way it was skewed, it basically induced Republican-leaning people to register to vote more than it did Democratic-leaning people. It was skewed that way. It actually worked. And then the Pennsylvania authorities said that that was an illegal lottery, and they either couldn't get to court. Anyway, they didn't get a ruling in time. This is basically Musk, and it was Musk who gave away the $2 million checks. Musk basically set up the same sort of thing in Wisconsin. That giveaway was allegedly in violation of state law. That might have not have been the best fight for the attorney general to have picked, because I think basically the law was not on his side. Bear in mind, the Supreme Court in Wisconsin is 4-3 Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them took the case or voted in favor of the attorney general against Musk. So I think that what Musk did is legal. And that was to basically set up a giveaway contest and to give 2 Wisconsin voters $1 million each. Let me say this, a nuclear conflagration definitely would imperil civilization. Whether the Wisconsin Supreme Court ends up 4-3 Democratic or 4-3 Republican, while I'd like to see it go Democratic, and I think that they would do the right thing on redistricting, will not, everybody relax, it will not imperil civilization.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It's good to know that Musk can't shift the earth that much. So there's another story that I saw, and this one I have video that I want to share with you, because Commerce Secretary Lutnick went on Fox and Friends, and he said, hey, everybody, it's a great time for us all to go out and support Elon Musk and buy Tesla stock. And I thought I'd share the video with you, because now there are multiple calls for investigations against Mr. Lutnick. People are pretty upset, saying you can't do that.
That's a violation of the Hatch Act. It's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's watch the video. See if you think this is illegal.
Build the next generation technology. I think if you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. When people understand the things he's building, the robots he's building, the technology he's building, people are going to be dreaming of today and Jesse Waters and thinking, gosh, I should have bought Elon Musk's stock. I mean, who wouldn't invest in Elon Musk? You got to be kidding.
Sorry, so you're okay. Illegal or okay?
Who wouldn't invest in Tesla stock the last month or two? All of the smart money on Wall Street. That stock has been absolutely hammered. And, you know, you could have predicted this. And actually, I did predict this, because my wife is a very good stock picker. And I told her, sell Tesla. I don't know anything about the market, but sell Tesla. I told her 2 months ago. And the reason was, and I think that the stock market recognized this, Kim, is that when you become this toxic, this hated, this much of a symbol for all the things that Musk has become a symbol for, and you have a consumer-based product, this doesn't make any sense as a marketing or sales strategy. You remember the Republicans hammered Budweiser over this Bud Light commercial that they said was too gay-friendly.
Yeah.
And they brought the stock price down. All that Budweiser did in that situation was to basically have an ad agency tell them to run this particular commercial, right? And the commercial ended up, offending, these red-blooded American guys who voted for Trump. I don't know exactly why, but they had one of their celebrities, such as Trump celebrities are, take out like an automatic and shoot Bud Lights or something, and and Bud Light really didn't try to antagonize its market. But when you see that 4/5 of the people who bought Tesla cars, I think, were Democrats, 4/5 of them identified as liberals. One of the reasons they wanted to have a Tesla was because it was a green, the green thing, Kim, right? That it was not gasoline, right? And so for him to so publicly be on Trump's side, and then the thing with the government employees, this chaos that he's caused, and they haven't done this in a sensible, tailored way. You could have guessed. I mean, you would have thought that Musk went short on Tesla, because it was so likely that Musk's actions were going to drive Tesla down precipitously. And that's what it did. One thing I would love to know is whether that presenter on Fox went out and bought some stock after he got that great tip from Lutnick. I bet he did. I bet he shed his stock. The stock is going down. Now, I think Musk's calculation, I'm not a mind reader, is that he can get enough sweetheart deals from Trump that he can make up for the disastrous loss of money. But he's not the world's richest person anymore. He's not, because Tesla has gone down so much. It's tanked so much. And I don't know, maybe they're going to sell the car in China, but I think Tesla is doomed as a brand in America with consumers. That's, again, I'm not a stock picker. Don't anybody buy or sell Tesla based on what I just said, but the market is selling it. The market wants to get rid of it.
Well, I don't know if this is going anywhere, but there's now 13 Democrats, including Maxine Waters, Elizabeth Warren, and they are all saying that the acting director of the ethics office needs to investigate whether Lutnick violated the federal ethics law by urging this investment in Tesla.
Do you remember this? What was her name? Conway? What? Kellyanne Conway.
Oh, yeah. How could we
When
forget?
When Trump
Conway,
went through
alternative facts.
Right, exactly. When Trump went through the first time, she went on some program, I think Fox and Friends, and said something laudatory about some product. And I think she was either sanctioned under the Hatch Act, or she had to, don't take my word for it, but my recollection is that was seen as a big faux pas. And
It
now,
was
of course,
she said, "Go buy Ivanka's clothing or products."
Right.
Yeah.
But now there are not the same guardrails. Lutnick doesn't seem to have any compunction. And of course, what's unbelievable is they've already reported that he owns hundreds of $millions worth of Tesla stock. I should have put him on the group chat with my wife, and maybe he could have shed his hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Tesla stock, but he didn't. So now he's holding this bag, which has very little left in it, of what used to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So he seems to be someone who's just completely craven. He seems to be somebody who he doesn't want to lose any more money on the Tesla stock he's still holding. And so he has a chance to be on the media. And he says, go buy this stuff. This stuff is going down, is falling down. I'm holding it. Please go buy some so it'll tilt back up. So he absolutely should be investigated for this. And there need to be these kind of guardrails. These aren't just like some kind of talking points about the Hatch Act. That's a real thing, that they're not supposed to hawk products. Now you can say, well, didn't Trump do that? Didn't he do the used car salesman thing when he said, I'm going to buy a Tesla? He said in front of the White House. But of course, Trump has acted like he's above the law. That doesn't mean that his officials are above the law. By the way, they don't have that Supreme Court decision about presidential immunity. There's no Secretary of Commerce immunity from the Hatch Act or from anything else. So yes,
better watch it, Lutnick.
He should be. He will be investigated. But the problem is that everyone says they should be investigated. These laws should be enforced. They've gotten rid of the inspectors general at agency after agency. At some point, who's going to enforce it? Now they're going after these law firms. We can talk about that if you want to, about the LA federal prosecutor. But they've gone after these law firms. I talked about that with Mark. Paul Weiss didn't really fight back. They made a deal. You can say that was craven, that was cowardly, but I'm sure that they had their business reasons. Paul Weiss in New York City. Meanwhile, two of the other firms, Jenner and Block, fought and got a court order. One of them, Wilmer Hale, is another famous law firm. I don't know if he went back there, but that's the one that Ali Mayorkas was from. And that firm fought, and a lot of their partners were in the courtroom. And I think they're going to win. What's hard about it is that when it comes to government contracts, if some government contractor doesn't want to hire you, you can complain and complain. But at some point, you're not really going to get relief. You're not going to get relief or a remedy from the courts, which is as good as getting the government business, right? You're going to not get this piece of government business and not get that piece of government business, and you're going to complain. And you know what? You're going to end up on the short end of the stick, at least during Trump's time. And I think that's what Paul Weiss, that law firm, calculated. And the other problem is that if lawyers, if people start to think that this lawyer, I need a lawyer who's Trumpy. It's not enough that I have a great lawyer. It's not enough that I have a lawyer who has a huge amount of experience in this area. Like I have 35 years of experience in federal criminal defense. I mean, I really know how to handle those kind of cases. But if some client thinks, well, I'm not Trumpy enough, or they think that, Wilmer Hale in Washington, D.C. is not Trumpy enough, they're going to go hire somebody else. I mean, that's just, people pick their lawyers and they pick lawyers. I have competitors here who used to be the U.S. attorney. Believe me, they use the fact that they were the U.S. attorney to get cases, and not in an improper way, but they use whatever they can ethically to try to sell themselves to clients. And the competing firms that are in with the Trump administration, believe me, it will be connoted that they're a better, you have hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. You have your liberty at stake. You're the CEO of one of these huge corporations. And so, you get the hint to hire somebody Trumpy. You could say that hires happens with every administration. The Democrats come in, the Republicans come in, but it's much more. I mean, it's always with Trump that there's not only a quantitative difference, but there seems like there's a qualitative difference, that he'll just do anything. And of course, people have to brace themselves and do whatever is legal and possible back, because Trump is not stopping. It's not like Trump has some internal guardrail. Where's the proof? Anyone who says he has an internal guardrail or external guardrail, show me your proof over these last 2 months.
What makes me sad about what you said is that it indicates to me that if someone's looking for a Trumpy lawyer, they've lost faith in the system and the fairness of the system, and they're solely looking for someone that can bring them influence with the judge.
And your point is?
Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, that's it. You mentioned, though, the firing of this Los Angeles prosecutor.
Oh, this is great stuff.
This guy, he was fired, and the thinking is that he was probably fired because he was connected to a lawsuit that was brought against a Trump donor. He was a federal prosecutor, now a former federal prosecutor, much like yourself, Adam Schleifer.
I didn't get fired by anybody, including I didn't get fired by the president.
He was fired on Friday, and it was likely because of his connection to this case. One of Trump's top donors was involved in this, and I guess Trump is taking it out on Mr. Schleifer.
So there is a fellow named Andrew Widerhorn. I want to say this correctly. Andrew Widerhorn. He is the former CEO of Fatburger and Johnny Rocket.
Right.
He's indicted for having misallocated basically, for fraud regarding $47 million. I'm not making this up. He's already been previously convicted in a scandal, federal financial scandal in Oregon. So he is an ex-felon as we speak, now indicted on these huge charges. He has a former U.S. attorney named Nick Hanna. Nick Hanna was the U.S. attorney under Trump the first time. He's at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. They're a famous, Republican-leaning firm in Los Angeles. So this Andrew Widerhorn, for his new federal criminal case, hires this Nick Hanna, who was the U.S. attorney under Trump the first time. And he has apparently complained that Widerhorn is getting the short end of the stick. It's not a fair case. And the answer is, if there are legal or factual deficiencies in the case, that's what we have the courts for. The case is scheduled for trial. File your motions, go to trial, win the case. You're a huge law firm with loads and loads of money behind you. Go try to win the case. And I think that this pressure actually boomeranged. I think that this is going to be a boomerang. I think the whole world is going to watch U.S. versus Andrew Widerhorn, former CEO of Fatburger and Johnny Rocket, and say, let's make sure that there was no shenanigans here. I mean, one of the reasons why these things boomerang is we have the LA Times that just did a huge story about it. We have the New York Times. They're not going to just let it alone. And the implication of the LA Times story is that somehow these charges are going to be dismissed. Boy, I don't think so. As I understand it, they found a firearm. That one of the charges is that he's a felon in possession of a firearm, right? Felony from the federal case in Oregon, firearm possession allegedly here. They're going to dismiss felon in possession of a firearm. Let's see if Trump and Attorney General Bondi are really going to do that. So I think that this was really against this particular prosecutor. And so I think that your account of it is from the newspaper. But here's my take on it. This is my former office. My take on it, this fellow, apparently a brilliant lawyer, Andrew, he's not Andrew. What's his name? The prosecutor?
His name is...
Andrew's the defendant.
Yeah, his name is, Adam Schleifer.
Adam. Okay, Adam.
Yeah.
How did you say that?
Schleifer.
So yeah. Schleifer, brilliant guy. And here's an interesting aspect of this. He's from a very rich family. And he ran for Congress as a Democrat, came in second in White Plains, Westchester, someplace like that, Upper Bronx, Yonkers. He came in second. So when he didn't win, he mounted a good campaign. He's a Democrat. So, of course, he was, attacking Trump's record, the Republicans' record. That's what you do when you run as a Democrat, right? So then he went, after he lost, he went back, he got his job as a federal prosecutor in LA. He has this major case, corporate fraud case that he's bringing. So I think that the MAGA crowd it stirred up this feeling against him. I think they probably read back the statements that he'd made against Trump when he ran as a Democratic candidate. And I hope that that's all it's about. I looked it up in Pacer, which is the records. There's another assistant U.S. attorney who was assigned to the case. I don't believe he's been fired. So this one may have just been personally against that assistant U.S. attorney. Yes, it's chilling to be fired because you ran for Congress on the other party. But at the same time, it's not that chilling for just two reasons, if I can say this. Number one, that's not the normal assistant U.S. attorney. The normal assistant U.S. attorney has not run for Congress on the other party from the one that's in power right now. I mean, a lot of people in his situation, I'm not saying that he should have, but a lot of people would have said, you know what, I'm going to resign anyway. There's somebody else on this case. I ran as a Democratic candidate. This might not, and I'm not saying that he should have, okay? I'm just saying a lot of people would have in that situation. And I think that this was directed more at him personally, but it was unbelievably rude and unprofessional and chilling by the administration. They apparently sent him an email saying basically President Trump fired you. Yeah. It's a one line, basically, you've been fired because Trump wants you fired. And all of his phone was turned off. He couldn't get access to his government phone. He couldn't get access to his government computer. And he apparently asked some of his colleagues in my old office, would they mind coming down the hall and at least helping him move his physical files out of the office, I guess, before they said security in there. Musk and his minions and Trump have done that with people, to have these truly humiliating firings where they not only turn over their systems, but they walk them out of the agency that they've served as a public servant. So I think that he and his stuff left thanks to his colleagues before he got walked out. And like I said, he's from this very wealthy family. He seems to be an incredibly talented lawyer. Believe me, he's going to land on his feet. Anyone who feels intimidated by that, keep doing your duty. That guy's going to land on his feet.
David Katz, all my questions have been answered. You're amazing. Thank you for coming in to talk to me special, and we'll see you on Thursday. It's wonderful. Say hi to Mark for me, and it's always great to be with you and Mark. Yeah, what a treat. Pleasure. Thank you for coming in. David Katz, everybody. My pleasure. Bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, he's such a great guy. And I have another great guy waiting in the wings, my old friend from KGO Radio in San Francisco. And I've kept him waiting long enough. He is iHeart political analyst for TV and radio. It is Gary Dietrich, everyone. Hi. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Hope you had a great weekend. I have a lot to talk to you about because Gary Dietrich, Greenland. What happened there? It's crazy. First of all, the Vances, it was just going to be Usha Vance. And then it's going to be both of them. And they're trying to make it into a photo op, but nobody wants to, I guess, appear with the Vances in Greenland. So they stick to the Space Force base. And then all this rhetoric comes out, Gary, about, Vance says, we don't really foresee using military force to take Greenland. And Trump says, nope, everything's on the table. Is this for real, this whole Greenland thing? And do you see the America running in with guns trying to overtake Greenland?
Well, the answer to the second question is obviously no. Yeah. I really don't think anybody sees that. Trump, in his usual bluster, well, everything's on the table. The reality is there are now American forces poised to do an amphibious, landing on the shores of Greenland. What's interesting about this Greenland thing is that prior to Trump and Vance bringing it up, nobody talked about Greenland. I mean, as you know, Kim, Iceland has sort of become tourist destination du jour in the last 5 to 10 years. People talk about going to Iceland, but Greenland has just been sitting out there. The reality of it is it is a strategic asset. That's what this is all about. Nothing more, nothing less. It's part of the geopolitical maneuvering between the West and China, in particular, to a lesser degree, Russia. That's what this is about. It is one more. I've been talking about this with Mark a lot over the last several months. The larger geopolitical issue playing out is East versus West. You can talk about NATO, you can talk about other things, but this is really about China versus the US in the long run. And Russia plays a role in that, but that's what this is about. And, the Trump administration is very clear that they are not going to give an inch of ground. It doesn't matter whether it's the Taiwanese Straits. It doesn't matter now whether it's Greenland. It doesn't matter. I mean, China circumnavigated Australia. That's something not getting a lot of play. But, China sent a small flotilla of its warships to circle Australia. One more saber rattling maneuver. So that's what this is all about. And I think what happened was, the bottom line was that rather than making a soft diplomatic mission, as they call it, having Usha go and do more of a cultural exchange, it became, our vice president on an American base, I think basically throwing down the gauntlet saying, look, we are not going to cede this strategic territory to China.
Have you seen the video? Because I have it to show you. Trump, I guess, paid lots of money to get this made. This video about how we stand with Greenland and how, here, let's watch it. Here it is. Thanks, Tony.
Cold silence of the tundra, a bond was born, not from treaties or trade, but from blood and bravery. While Germany controlled Europe, the Nazis set their sights on the Arctic. Greenland became an unwitting combatant, and the United States stepped in, not to conquer, but to protect. In 1943, nearly 1,000 American soldiers with 4 chaplains set sail from New York to Greenland, carrying with them hope, duty, and a quiet fear. But their ship was torpedoed by a Nazi U-boat, and the frigid waters of the North Atlantic became a grave. Those 4 chaplains gave up their life vests, giving their lives so that others might live, to protect America and Greenland. Their sacrifices helped win our freedom, and we will never forget. Together, Americans and Greenlanders stood as sentinels at the top of the world. But today, Greenland faces new threats, from Russian aggression and Chinese expansion. Our shared legacy lives on in every joint mission, every Arctic patrol, every partnership forged in the shadow of melting ice and rising tensions. This is not just history, it is destiny. Now is the time to stand together again. For peace, for security, for the future, America stands with Greenland.
So that's a little propaganda-y, Gary Dietrich. I don't know if that's going to work. We're here to protect you. We're not here to, control you. I don't know. I don't think Greenlanders are gonna stand for that.
Well, I would say that video, and I have seen that video, Kim. Thanks for sharing it with your audience. To me, yes, it has a propaganda feel to it, but the facts are that and this is when Greenland began to take on strategic importance, that during the Nazi attempt to really control the Atlantic, which they did to a large degree, and it's made famous in now, for example, Tom Hanks's movie Greyhound, etc., that the Atlantic was really under siege. And this became one of the most difficult portions of us coming to the aid of the Allies, most notably Britain in World War II. More recently, and this is where Greenland has not been talked about, and the Arctic hasn't been talked about probably enough, but the Arctic is seen as a very strategic zone, both economically and militarily for the future going forward. And that's what this is all about again. So I think that video, frankly, is aimed at a more global audience and even a domestic audience to help people understand why Trump and Vance would even care about this as much as it is, if not more, than Greenlanders themselves.
Let's move to the Signal scandal. I don't know if we've talked to you about this yet, but over the weekend, after this whole, sharing of military secrets on a non-governmental chat, comes this article about Pete Hegseth. And apparently it's Bring Your Wife to Work Day for him, because he had brought his wife to more than one sensitive meeting as he met with foreign military leaders on a trip. Apparently during these meetings, sensitive information was shared. It doesn't say top secret, but sensitive enough. It's a bit of a scandal. I don't think that's normal to bring your wife to a Secretary of Defense meeting.
Well, I think Hegseth, he's clearly having stumbles. There's Republican senators that are in particular saying, look, you guys got to tighten up the ship over there. Okay. He's not been in this kind of a leadership role before. That's been made clear. He's growing into it, the Trump people would say. Democrats, of course, have called for his political head. That's not going to happen. Vance made that clear again when he was in Greenland, when he was asked that question. He said, don't make no mistake about it. He's not going anywhere. Now, could the political pressure build so much that they need a political sacrificial lamb in the Trump administration? Potentially. Right now, it doesn't look like that's the case. If there's not another big misstep, he and the others involved in this probably survive, Tulsi Gabbard, et cetera. But, there's no question that they're under the microscope now and can really afford, I would say, no more big missteps. Or there's even going to be members of their own party in Congress saying, look, you know what? You got to get a more experienced hand at the helm.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it doesn't look good for him. And I think this happened with the wife at the meetings before the signal flap.
Right.
But it's just now it looks like it's just building, and they're kind of making a case against him in the media almost.
Right. Well, Hegseth is going to be a big target, not only because he's Trump's guy, but also because he's taken some pretty strong stands since he took this office just 2 months ago, on things like the border, on things like trans folks in the military. So he's going to be under the microscope, and really and honestly, he cannot afford to become a liability to Trump's agenda and the administration. This is the way it is for every cabinet secretary. I mean, anybody who gets their head too far above the fence line is likely to have it shot off politically. I don't mean that in any way, on a personal level. We want to be careful about that. But, politically, you want to do your job and not become the issue.
I have another video to show you. This one about whether or not the Trump administration is in the throes of a collapse. James Carville was on Smirkonish on CNN, and they asked him previously when the Trump administration would collapse. And now they've come back to him and said, okay, is it time? Is it collapsing? And I wanted to share his opinion and see if you have a different take on what's happening with the Trump administration. We have the video here.
Well, what tense are we on? Is it collapsing or has it collapsed? That's the only argument to have. And I was wrong. I said Memorial Day is before April Fool's Day, which the Trump administration should make a national holiday because it so accurately represents who they are. So I'm not really, we're not arguing when we look at what's happening in the markets. We look at what's happening on Sigelgate. We look at what's happening all around us. Treating measles with apricot pits or something like that. I think the thing is collapsed. But I'll go to you. Let's take the middle ground here and say it's collapsing, and I'll meet you halfway. But that's about all I can do.
So it doesn't
Harry
feel
and
like
tonight. I really
thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. So it doesn't feel like we're in the throes of a collapse to me, but perhaps you have a different take.
Well, this has been Carville's approach to this since the beginning of the Trump administration. As you know, he wrote that very controversial New York Times article, editorial piece. Why do I say controversial? The one where he said about, the Democratic Party needs to play possum, Ali rope-a-dope strategy. Let the Trump administration implode on its own. He stuck to that line. That has not been popular amongst many Democrats who say, no, we need to come out swinging with everything we've got. We shouldn't sit there and wait. How long are we going to wait and do this rope-a-dope, the damage that could happen? I really think that, and following that, Smirkonish played a CNN piece where Harry Enten talks about how Trump currently has his strongest approval ratings ever. I mean, even including his first one. So Enten's really making the point, look, the collapse is not there. And, later on, if you look at Smirkonish asked him about Gavin Newsom and saying, we've got a toxic Democratic brand, quoting Newsom, when he cites the CNN and NBC polls at 27%, approval ratings for the Democratic Party. So I think to me, honestly, Kim, this is part of the larger debate going on in the Democratic Party of how weak are we vis-a-vis Trump And what's the strategy to address that? Basically, Newsom's taken an approach of, hey, we need to do a lot of introspection. We have a toxic brand. I would say that probably Carville agrees with some of that, but his thing is, what levers of power do we have? He's real big on all these special elections coming up between now and the midterms next year, and then the midterms themselves as the real evidence, as he says, of how toxic we are versus Trump.
You mentioned Gavin Newsom going on Bill Maher. He did say that the Democrats are toxic, that we have, let's see exactly what he said here. He called the Democratic Party toxic, and he's taking some huge flack for this. The Democrats are not happy. And as you mentioned with previously, this whole sit back and let the Trump administration collapse, you have Democrats showing up at town halls saying, do something. We need to do something. And at least Gavin Newsom seems like maybe he's taking some steps.
Well, I think the challenge, Newsom's finding himself between a rock and a hard place like Carville is, because he has members of his own California congressional delegation, as you know, Kim, spearheading these town halls, even in red congressional districts, not their own districts, going to red districts and holding these in an attempt to, as in their view, shine a really bright light on the failures and the fears that they have about Trump and his actions. And Newsom's taken a much more introspective approach. Unfortunately for him right now, it's seen as a very self-serving approach, that it's an attempt to redefine himself in preparation for 2028, and so that's the flack and the feedback that, a lot of what Gavin Newsom's been getting has been a lot of flack from his own party, saying that, listen, you're being somewhat disingenuous about this because it was you who was leading the charge on a lot of these, especially cultural issues that you say now caused us problems in November.
Well, it sure looks like he's setting himself up for a run in 2028.
Well, as Andrew Yang said, a former presidential candidate, his take was, here's the odds of Gavin Newsom running in 2028, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
I think most people at this point would agree with that.
Gary Dietrich, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I love having you on the show.
Hey, thanks, Kim. You're doing a great job for Mark, and have a great rest of the show.
Thank you so much. Gary Dietrich, everyone. And Gary's report is brought to us by Bill Campbell Real Estate. If you need a good realtor, you've got to go check it out. Bill Campbell is at Remax Gold. So if you're relocating into or from Northern California, you need a highly respected real estate professional like Bill Campbell of Remax Gold. You can call or you can text Bill at 530-448-7474. Again, that's 530-448-7474. And he is gracious enough to bring us Gary Dietrich's report every week. Bill Campbell, thank you so much. And check him out if you're in that area.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Everything is going extremely well.
What he's got going here is a situation.
You people are crazy.
You just don't get it, really. You don't.
I cannot believe it.
It's fantastic.
Thompson, party of four.
What are you doing?
You cannot say you love your country.
Sayonara, sucker. Good day, sir.
Why are you yelling?
Seriously, what the
I'm in for Mark Thompson today. Hi, Tony. How's
Sorry,
it going?
wrong button.
It's okay.
We hit a bunch at the same time here.
It's good. We have a great conversation coming up with Thom Hartman and Mark Thompson. Mark asked Thom Hartman the big question about the legitimacy of the last U.S. election and about the rise of right-wing parties worldwide. So that is something I'm looking forward to hearing. And Thom Hartman is always such a great guest. Let's take a look at this interview that Mark and Thom recorded just a couple of days ago.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, if you know me at all, how much I adore Thom Hartman's work. He is prolific and he's brilliant. And I feel if there was a Mount Rushmore for progressive voices, Thom Hartman would be on it. Might be the first face up there. How about it for Thom Hartman, everybody? Yeah, come on. Welcome, Thom. I am excited that you're here, and I'll get right into it. You wrote your Hidden History series. I recommend to everyone, and I've done it even without you being a guest. I just think these books are accessible, and you review so much stuff that's I think it's instructional, and for this time, puts it in sort of a historical framework that is quite, as I say, instructive. So when it comes to oligarchy, you actually wrote a book called The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. And my God, you just lay out in specific ways exactly what we are living right now.
Yeah, and I wrote the book, I think 2 years, maybe longer. In fact, the book starts out with if Trump got elected. No, I wrote the book. The book was published in November of 2020.
Right.
So, yeah.
You said America is at a turning point. This is from your book. And whether we continue our slide into oligarchy and tyranny or pull back to small d democratic values will depend in no small part on the planning and work we do now and the candidates and policies we support and put forward 2 and 4 years from now. You were warning of this in the book. And then, as I say, you put it in a historical context. So what you were warning of has happened. I mean, Elon Musk, this richest man in the world, has gone in not only with his money, not only the oligarchical structure, but with the recklessness and the sort of wanton destruction of government and dismantling of government that has been unprecedented. I think it's unprecedented. That's why I turned to you. Is it unprecedented? It seems so.
By and large, yeah. I don't think that we've ever had a president. I mean, McKinley had his guy. His name was Mark. What was it? Mark. It wasn't Mark Thompson, was it? McKinley's guy.
I hope not.
It was.
I desperately hope not.
It's been a lot of years. I'm sorry, but
sure.
McKinley had a Karl Rove type guy whose name was Mark something. Who was a bit of a psychopath, I think. But he was nothing compared to what Elon Musk has been doing to America in terms of, he was more like Karl Rove. He was more like a political advisor.
Sure.
So, in fact, Karl Rove used to compare himself to him. But no, to the best of my knowledge, we have never seen a president turn the presidency and the federal government over to any of the richest people in America.
I mean, you've spoken, though, about how the oligarchical structure, oligarchical creep, I'll just call it, sort of takes charge, and how the Justice Department is informed by oligarchical needs, even under now I'm doing it. What's his name under who had the sort of criminal justice reform? The guy who was the apologist for Trump the first time, Bill Barr. And so Bill Barr went through all of this and really was a way to let other oligarchs and those who are white-collar criminals off the hook. So you saw this creep. It happened here and there, in the Justice Department and in other institutions of government. But here you have a wrecking ball being taken to government, and it just there's a shock to the system right now.
Yeah, it's like they're fulfilling the campaign pledges of David Koch back in 1980 when he ran for vice president on the Libertarian ticket, and his platform was pretty explicit. End basically all aspects of government except for the courts, which can be used to protect corporations and enforce contracts, and the police and the criminal justice system that'll protect us from bad guys, and the army. He wanted to privatize Social Security, privatize the post office, privatize Medicare and Medicaid, shut down all public education and compulsory schooling, turn all education into for-profit business. Basically everything. I mean, even all the roads in the country should be converted to toll roads owned by billionaires, for their own personal profit. And that sure looks like that's what Trump and Musk are doing right now. Is they're deconstructing the American state, the administrative state, to paraphrase Steve Bannon. And this is, of course, exactly what Vladimir Putin would want, exactly what Xi Jinping would want. And the destruction of our soft power overseas with the destruction of USAID is particularly distressing. It's setting America up, that and all this tariff nonsense, and Putin convincing Trump that the European Union was just created to screw with the United States. All of these things are just really designed to weaken our country internationally, so that we won't present a challenge to those guys when Putin finally decides he's going to full on take out Ukraine, and Xi decides he's going to full on take out Taiwan and maybe South Korea and Japan.
Yeah, that may all happen at the same time.
Yep.
I want to double back to the Trump Putin thing in a second, but one of the things that's remarkable to me, Tom, is that there is no sleight of hand here. There is a sort of an expressed desire to do these things that you've talked about, and the dismantling of government is being done under this weak-ass kind of flag that they fly, which is waste, fraud, and abuse. And again, they just keep going to that refrain: waste, fraud, and abuse. And meanwhile, they recklessly fire critical federal workers in many cases without any consideration or examination as to what these workers are actually doing. It's astounding to me. And I guess my question to you is, as Americans, and even as a party, I guess the GOP is just so cowed by Trump or so afraid of Trump. But as Americans, are we just so drunk on this waste, fraud, and abuse BS that Musk is forwarding, that they're getting away with it? I'm just talking about the fact that, as I say, there is no subterfuge here.
Yeah. No, this goes back to the Reagan era. This was Reagan's excuse for gutting federal programs and trying to dial them back. It was a phrase that I'm pretty sure I've been around the political scene and paying attention to it for many, many years. And I don't recall it prior to Reagan, that phrase. I mean, it's possible it was out there, but I really think this was a Reagan thing. And Trump has borrowed a lot from Reagan. He stole the "Make America Great Again" from Reagan. That was his '84 campaign slogan. Or maybe it was 80. But in any case, and one aspect of that, fraud, has worked very well for them. They've been using voter fraud since the 1960s as an excuse to prevent mostly brown and black people from voting, and now women. We saw this with the executive order from Trump just this week, basically saying that if a married woman has adopted her husband's name and didn't go to a court of law, and I actually had a caller into my program today who said that she just did this. She just went and legally changed her name so that she would be able to vote, and it cost her $480.
Wow.
And she has to publish, and it cost another $100 to publish it in the newspaper, because when you change your name, you have to publish it in the newspaper.
God.
And in her state. And
we should spend a moment on this for those who might not be aware. So the executive order actually stipulates, if it wasn't, as is typical, if you take the married name of your husband, if you haven't formally changed your name, you aren't then eligible to vote. Isn't that kind of?
Yeah, by and large, yeah. If the name on your birth certificate and the name on your passport or driver's license are different, then you have to prove that you legally changed your name. And 99% of women who get married and change and take their husband's name never bothered to do that. It was never an issue before. So he doesn't want my wife to vote. He doesn't want most married women to vote. It's just that simple. And the reason why is fairly clear. Women vote for Democrats over Republicans by about 10 points more than men do.
It's extraordinary. So again, this is a blizzard of this kind of thing. And so to get back to my question, or observation, it just seems as though this is happening with such a full frontal assault, and I'm finding the pushback is tepid.
Yeah. Sadly, I think that there are There's a lot of Democrats who are just shell-shocked. I mean, one of the things we saw in the 24 election was AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee, come into 4 different congressional districts. There may have been more. There were 3 high-profile races where they actually took out sitting members of Congress, or at least 2 of the 3 of them. And then here in Oregon, we had Sheila Jayapal, Pramila Jayapal's sister, who was on the local, a local government official, and she was running for an open house seat that was being vacated by Earl Blumenauer. And, it's a predictably Democratic seat. I mean, it's Portland. And she had criticized Israel's bombing of Gaza, and so they came in with millions of dollars. Nobody realized that it was AIPAC until after the election. They set up a phony front corporation and ran all the money through that. And they did it, the day after the disclosure would be required, so that it wouldn't have to be disclosed until the next cycle, which was after the election. And just blew her out of the water. I mean, just took her down. And so you've got Democrats who are terrified of pissing off AIPAC and big corporations. You've got Republicans who are terrified of pissing off Trump and Elon Musk. I mean, Joni Ernst, a military sexual assault survivor, was, inclined not to vote for Pete Hegseth, and she could have prevented him from becoming our defense secretary. And so what do? They, Elon Musk talks about, we're gonna pay for a primary challenge for her, and suddenly she's changing her mind. I mean, they have both parties cowed. And, it's a real tragedy. There's, you've got Bernie out there and AOC doing their anti-oligarchy tour, and you've got a handful of other good Democrats, Mark Pocan, Ro Khanna, who are, and a few others who are campaigning now in red districts, and God bless them. But there should be 200 Democrats doing this, at least.
Right. And the reason there aren't is because you're saying, in a way, it's also fear that that money now so controls our politics, and no one's got more money than Elon Musk, and the Republicans really have control of purse strings that can just eliminate and erase any kind of Democrat they want to get rid of.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's going to really inform us about how this works is this Wisconsin election that's coming up, for the Supreme Court, which Elon has dumped at least $20 million into. He
has big interest there, right?
I guess so. Yeah, he's involved in some kind of a lawsuit in Wisconsin.
It's right. It's a lawsuit about driverless vehicles, I believe. I think that's I
hadn't dug into the details.
Yeah, that's his agenda item, I believe, in Wisconsin. That's why he cares so much about it. But it's extraordinary to see. It reminds me kind of in reverse of what Jane Mayer wrote in Dark Money. How the money seeds the politics for later. Everything from high schools to colleges to small legislative kind of meetings in communities that you wouldn't even consider received that Koch money. At least in Mayer's book, it was primarily Koch money. And this is the opposite. This is now I'm going after everybody. I've already got the money and I'm coming in from the backside. Musk is now bringing it the heat the other way. Yeah. But I want to double back to something you alluded to, which is the Trump-Putin relationship and what might happen. I mean, this sort of fragile world order that I see all of these relationships with such fragility. And you mentioned the soft power. I think it's such a great thing that America has done effectively through VOA and through USAID and all of these different ways internationally. And of course, that's all just been, torn
It's how we
down.
won the Cold War.
Thank you.
Which just infuriated, KGB officer Vladimir Putin when he was basically running East Germany.
Yeah, expand on that. You're saying that East Germans were able to receive communication, radio signals from the West.
Yeah, I lived on the East German border, from the summer of '88 until the 87 till 88, as I recall, or maybe 86 to 87. No, it was whatever. And in fact, in the spring when the ground would thaw, I mean, the wall, the fence that's divided East and West Germany was 100 yards from my house, and as the ground would thaw, the landmines that the East Germans had put into the ground, that you'd have to cross over if you wanted to try and climb the fence, would explode.
Wow, that's unreal.
The sun would come in the morning. It would, start thawing the ground out, and the ground would move a little bit, and boom!
Oh my God.
And we go outside to see what the hell's going on, and here's the guys up in the towers. There was always two of them within sight of wherever you were, and with their machine guns pointed right at you.
What were you doing there, Thom?
I was working with an international relief agency, Salem International, and I had been working with them for a decade before, and I still occasionally do volunteer work with them. We set up programs. I went into Uganda during the Civil War. We set up a famine program there. We set up a program in Colombia. We set up one in Peru. We set up one in the Philippines. We had two of them here in the United States. There were 3 in Germany. We built one in Russia, actually.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So
it was extraordinary.
It was, it was fun. I didn't take pay for it. I'd been fairly successful in business in the preceding years, and was fortunate in
That's
that regard.
terrific. That's wild. So in any case, you were saying that those communications from the West could be heard by those who were in East Germany.
Yeah, Putin was the KGB guy who was largely in charge of East Germany, and he was very unhappy when the wall came down, and with Radio Free Europe and all that kind of stuff, and Trump just shut down Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. And this is just a crime, frankly, because it was our assistance to these countries, to countries in crisis, that made America desirable, frankly, to some of the countries that were disengaging from communism, and it was our propaganda, as it were. I mean, Voice of America, you could call it propaganda. I used to listen to it every day. It was fairly solid news. In fact, I'd listen to it in German to improve my German.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was BBC-ish, I guess, is what my understanding was. Yeah,
that's reasonable. They would occasionally do editorials, but mostly it was just the news.
I mean, but that's the footprint of America, in a positive way, was established through both that and the mechanisms of soft power through USAID, and it was also something good for the planet. You felt as though my country is doing something good. There's a certain sense of pride I had about the fact that we were, our tax dollars went to lifting up communities that would have no chance otherwise. I mean, impoverished communities, starving communities affected by famine, disease, et cetera. So it's extraordinary. But to the Putin-Trump relationship, it's implicit what's happening. What's your take on how these two guys have this understanding? Is it an explicit benefit that Trump is getting? What's going on there?
Well, one of the things we know for sure is that when Trump finally burned through all of his father's money in the 90s and declared bankruptcy 5 or 6 times and demonstrated he didn't even have the business acumen to run a casino, that both of his sons on different occasions came out and said, the Russians are keeping us afloat, basically. That there's been enormous amounts, and well documented, by the way, enormous amounts of Russian money that prevented Donald Trump from failing for many years, particularly in the late 90s, early 2000s. So there's that. I always wondered if Putin had something on Trump. Numerous people have reported that back in the 80s, when he married the daughter of a KGB officer, or a KGB informant, excuse me. Ivana was Czech and her father was an informant. And Trump went over to Russia. That he got basically seduced by them, and he came He came back in '87 and ran for president for about a week. Held one rally in New Hampshire, and put an ad in the newspapers in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and Los Angeles Times, calling for America to pull out of NATO, and which was, of course, what the Russians desperately wanted. For a long time, I figured Putin either had something on him, probably something that went back to the beauty pageants in Moscow, or that he simply owed him. And I still think those are legitimate things. But I had this conversation with Michael Cohen a couple of weeks ago on his podcast, and I asked him what he thought, and because he was there,
sure, sure,
for like 15 years with Trump, and he's like, I don't think Russia has anything on Trump explicitly. I don't think that they need to blackmail him. I think, Michael said, I think that Trump and Putin view the world the same way. That's all. They're both autocrats. They both they're both dictators. Trump wants America to be like Russia. And so, the more he can get in bed with Putin, the more he can do things that help Putin out, the more Putin can help him turn America into Russia. And ultimately, when Americans are no longer objecting to all of this, we'll become alliances, we'll become allies.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, I read Cohen's first book, and it was really instructive in that there was a shakedown going on all the time. Cohen was just his shakedown artist and did some really awful stuff. And by the way, he apologizes at like every 12 pages, he's apologizing for what he did. But the only thing, I just love kicking this around with you for a second. The only reason I guess my follow-up would be, I don't see how aligning yourself with Putin helps you domestically with the business of authoritarianism here. I mean, it seems such a strong and incredible turn of the ship that you may lose some people overboard. You know what I mean?
Well, that initially happened, with Republicans who were going, really? I don't know. But they kind of all went away and changed their tune. There was more of that during his first iteration, but I think he's kind of whipped them into line, the GOP. I mean, Elon Musk is now taking Putin's side. Both Musk and Trump are arguing that, Ukraine was responsible for Russia invading them, which is just a despicable position to hold. But, they're both promoting that and multiple other Russian talking points. And again, I think, I mentioned in my piece today in Hartman Report that Putin has been talking recently about this multipolar world. There had been talk before about a unipolar world, basically the whole world being controlled by America, or American democracies, but now China is super powerful. They're the second largest economy behind us, and Russia has, the most nuclear weapons in the world. And so what Putin is arguing is that Russia should control basically Europe and that part of Western Asia. China should control Eastern Asia and South Asia. And the United States, Trump specifically, should control the Americas, which extends from Greenland, if you look on a proper map, all the way down to the southern tip of South America. And I think that makes a lot of sense, that Trump has bought into that. And that's why he's talking about, taking Canada, Mexico, Greenland, Panama by force. And it also ratifies Russia's taking Ukraine by force. I mean, such an American president saying such a thing prior to Trump would have been absolutely unthinkable, at least since World War II. I mean, we're way past the Monroe Doctrine.
Right.
But I think that's what it is. I think that Trump and Putin and Xi think alike. I think they see the world the same way. They think that you need and Curtis Yarvin, and the whole Dark Enlightenment thing.
He's the monarchist. Just to Curtis Yarvin is who thinks the CEO should run America. That these countries are better run by CEOs and with the efficiency of a CEO.
We need to get over our dictator phobia. Yeah.
Exactly right. Only you can't you can't run the United States of America like Apple or like Hewlett Packard or whatever. It just doesn't pencil out, and you can tell by the way these guys, the way Musk comes in and tries to run it like Twitter. It can't be done. So I want to follow up in our last few minutes with this idea that you posited actually regarding the deportation and the scooping up and elimination and imprisonment of so many who either have, quote, gang affiliations or are in the country illegally. They're violent criminals who turn out to be, PhD students at Yale or at Tufts or at Columbia, or they turn out to be makeup artists or soccer players or whatever in the case of the Venezuelans. But you point out this is the idea. The idea is deliberately, because we talk about cruelty, and it's just the whole thing seems, even in the discharge of federal workers, everything's done so cruelly, so wantonly.
Yeah.
You say that cruelty and the way this is being done is the idea, is to scare people. And once you have everybody scary, you've developed a scary enough set up in America that everyone is fearful that people fall in line.
It's true, and the history of every rise of dictatorship throughout history, demonstrates that, and we're repeating some of those horrible examples. In fact, this is the piece that I'm writing this afternoon for tomorrow's op-ed. I was once a psychotherapist, and I ran a community for severely abused children, and I knew psychopaths. Most of them were the parents of the children that we had in our care. It takes a psychopath to beat a child within an inch of their lives, and or rape a child or whatever. And the cardinal characteristic of psychopaths is that they have no empathy. They can imitate empathy. They can pretend to have empathy. They understand empathy. They know what it looks like. They know how to behave that way, but they actually don't have the feelings. And, here you had Elon Musk just a couple of weeks ago in a conversation with Joe Rogan saying that basically Democrats are trying to exploit the empathy bug in our system. This concerns me tremendously, that we've got people who literally don't have empathy or sneer at empathy running our country. But that's a cardinal characteristic, not just of psychopaths, but also of leaders of dictatorships. Erdogan, El-Sisi, obviously Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. These guys were all literally clinically diagnosable psychopaths. And I'm seeing those characteristics here. And there's a long history of that kind of thinking in the Republican Party. Ayn Rand, her hero was a young man named Hickman who had murdered a 12-year-old girl and then, sneered at public opinion right up until the moment he was hanged. And he was the basis of several of her heroes in her novels. And she thought that he was just, he was the best guy ever. He was her role model. And she told Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes, empathy is a poison. It's a weakness. So, we're at this kind of turning point in America where we're going to decide whether to kick our elders out, or to the curb, whether we've already told several million people around the world, just get over it. You're either going to starve or die of AIDS. Sorry. And now we're gutting Medicaid. We're going to, deny health care to millions of Americans, dialing back on or making Social Security dysfunctional. It's just, the entire situation is tragic, Mark. It's tragic. And what's so particularly disgusting about it is their use of religion to justify it. When, whether it's Maimonides, the Jewish tradition, Jesus in Matthew 25 or the Sermon on the Mount, or Muhammad even, and his teachings about compassion. And of course, in Buddhism and Hinduism as well, all the world's major religions put at the center of their focus this idea that compassion and empathy have to be, prime values, and they're values that are just ridiculed, dismissed, and ridiculed by today's GOP.
Yeah, viewed as weakness.
Yeah, and that is just a terrible, terrible danger.
Last minute or so, I'm curious about the reaction from the rest of the world, to which you were referring a little bit earlier. And I'm wondering if our movement as a country, our sudden movement to this clear autocracy, you can see it, as I say, there's no sleight of hand. I'm wondering if it will in any way produce a reaction toward democracy, away from, we've seen it in Canada, right, where all of a sudden the leftist candidate rose to beat the candidate from the right who'd actually been outpacing the candidate from the left for some time. I'm just wondering if you think that there'll be a reaction, I'd view it as positive, I think you would too, toward democracy from the rest of the world because of the changes that they're seeing in America.
Oh, there's no doubt that that's happening, whether it's Mark Carney in Canada or whether it's Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, and, the rhetoric that she's using now. What we're hearing out of Denmark and Greenland right now, As J.D. Vance and his wife go over there originally they were going to go for a dog sled race, but now they're going to just hide out in an American Air Force base because nobody there wants them there. There's significant blowback. The question is whether democracy will survive here.
Right.
And in the midst of all this, by the way, I think it's important to note that there are very substantial and growing pro-Putin, anti-democracy, pro-oligarchy movements in all of these democratic countries. And they're being driven by social media. They're being driven by trolls, who are promoting these ideas, many of them being funded by Russia and China and some by Iran, and also by, presumably, apparently the algorithms certainly on X and probably on Meta. So, I think it's an open question right now whether democracy survives in the United States. I mean, we're 2 months into a 4-year term here.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And this is my last question for you. As you're so generous with your time. You know how much I love these conversations we have occasionally. And we had Greg Palast on the show a couple of times, and we talk about voter disenfranchisement. We've even had statisticians who look at the statistical anomalies associated with some of the swing state results, and some of the drill downs I think are provocative, and I think that they make the case fairly well for the ways in which democracy can be undermined the old-fashioned way. You wrote a book about this. So I'm curious how you view the last election and moving forward to the next election. I'm not asking you to commit 100%, but do you think there are question marks about the last election at all?
Yeah, I do. I really do, and particularly in Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump thanked Elon Musk for what he did with the machines and the computers in Pennsylvania. What the hell? When people call into my show or whatever, we had this conversation with Ro Khanna today, in fact, where somebody called in and said, will there even be elections in 2026? And I'm like, that's the wrong question. I mean, they still have elections in Russia.
Right.
The question is not, will there be elections? The question is, will it be a fair election? Will it be an honest election? And you and I were talking a few minutes ago about how Trump is trying to pre-rig the election by preventing the wrong people from voting and using voter fraud as the BS excuse. So I'm very concerned about that. Georgia's preparing to purge another 460,000 people off their voting rolls. We've seen 20 million people purged off the voting rolls nationwide every couple of years, just before every major, presidential election. Virtually all of it, or at least the questionable purges, happening in red states. Mostly in blue areas in big cities in red states. Houston, Dallas, and Texas. The big cities in Florida, Georgia. Number one, will they succeed in rigging the election this way, at least across the red states, and some purple states that Republicans control? And number two, how effective is big money going to be? And again, like I said, the elections we're going to see next week are probably going to tell us a lot about that. But there's no doubt in my mind that if Elon Musk hadn't poured almost $300 million into Trump's campaign at the last minute and swung X, toward Trump heavily, and our president right now would be Kamala Harris. So and the Democrats would have held the House and Senate. So will big money continue to be as effective as it was in the last election? And to a large extent, I think that Musk's employment of big money is starting to wake people up in a way that might cause it to be less effective.
Oh, really? That's interesting, because
that's what I'm hearing out of Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, because all the same factors to which you've just referred are all going to be in play: control of a social media platform and control of big money.
That's right. But increasingly, the Democratic message in response is not to respond to the inflammatory ads that call Democrats, child blood drinkers or something, but rather to say, are you really going to, let this guy buy the election? Are you really going to believe all these ads from this rich guy? He just wants your money. He just wants your vote so that he can continue to screw with us. They want. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. if they have some electoral victories next week, I am seriously concerned about the future of America.
Sure.
If Democrats can have some victories in the face of this massive amount of money and social media presence, then suddenly I become optimistic.
Well, I do think calling out the billionaires is a good look because being in bed with the billionaires is a bad look, and we know that the Democrats have been in bed as well. But I mean, not like this. I mean, this is they live in bed with the billionaires. So, Thom, love talking to you. Look forward to your. I'll have links, by the way, to your books under this video and to all your stuff. And can't wait till the next conversation. I enjoy it every time. Thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be with you. It's always
The Mark Thompson Show.
And that was Mark Thompson and Thom Hartman. And we've got some news for you now here on the Mark Thompson Show. Time to get to it because sometimes we don't always get to news, but we like it when we can. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. President Trump's promised Liberation Day is 48 hours away. Wednesday, new reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect against Canada, Mexico, China, and the European Union. The White House says that will undo decades of those powers taking advantage of the United States. Market analysts expect a volatile Wall Street week with uncertainty of those tariffs. We're seeing that today as well. Elon Musk is visiting the CIA today. A CIA spokesperson said Musk was invited by CIA Director John Ratcliffe to meet with him at the agency to discuss government efficiency. Musk has been leading President Trump's efforts to cut waste and fraud in the federal government. Musk insists his cost-cutting measures through Doge are being done very carefully. He's going on a bit of a makeover tour. They're trying to present a softer side of Elon Musk, which is kind of hard when he showed up on stage with a chainsaw, but it's okay. Everything's being done thoughtfully now. Atlantic journalist Jeffrey Goldberg is refuting claims of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz in the aftermath of the leak of the military attack plans in Yemen. Appearing on NBC's Meet the Press, Goldberg says Waltz's claims that the two had never met before really aren't true. Goldberg didn't go into details about how he knows Waltz, only saying his number was in Waltz's phone, and the National Security Advisor likely added him to a Signal group chat discussing military plans by accident. The two NASA astronauts who spent 9 months aboard the International Space Station are very happy to be home. NASA's SpaceX Crew 9, Sonny Williams and Butch Whitmore, had to stay on the ISS a lot longer than expected after their Boeing Starliner spacecraft was deemed unsafe for them to return home in. Whitmore and Williams say they were not quite aware of all the attention they were getting here on Earth while they were just up there doing their jobs. Both thanked the nation for caring about them, and they also said they never felt stranded or abandoned while they were in space, but are happy to be home. Egg prices are dropping as chicken flocks begin to recover from the bird flu. The average wholesale price of a dozen eggs, $3 last week, down from a record $8.15 last month. So, protesters were out in force at Tesla dealerships across the country over the weekend. More than 200 demonstrations were held Saturday in what organizers call a global day of action. They're targeting Tesla because they believe CEO Elon Musk is using his wealth to fund political actions that they view as a threat to democracy. Rescue teams in Myanmar are searching for survivors in the rubble after a massive earthquake killed over 1,700 people. The Southeast Asian country was rocked early Friday by a very powerful magnitude 7.7 earthquake. It destroyed buildings near the epicenter west of Mandalay, and the search for survivors continues in that area. Yeah, it's horrible scenes and pictures from Myanmar showing the devastation there. Here in California, a fast-growing wildfire in Southern California has sent residents fleeing from their homes. CAL FIRE officials say the Silver Fire broke out in Inyo County outside the town of Bishop, and it has quickly grown to 1,000 acres by Sunday night. Several communities in Inyo and nearby Mono County have been placed under mandatory evacuation orders. The fire officials say there are really strong winds in this area right now, and that has grounded firefighting aircraft, crucial to getting ahead of this thing. That's made it tough to start getting containment on this flames. So again, this is the Silver Fire, and it is outside Bishop in Inyo County, and there are some evacuation orders in place there. The California Department of Water Resources reports the snowpack is now at 90% of average in California. That's a key factor for water supply forecasting. We've had some recent storms that help boost the levels of our reservoirs, leading to a state water project allocation increase of 40% of requested supplies. Yeah, there they are. Looking at the snowpack, 90% of average. So we're looking good right now. A proposed ballot initiative in California named after alleged United Healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione would make it illegal for an insurance company to delay, deny, or modify any medical procedure or medication suggested by a licensed physician in the state of California. It has serious consequences like disability, death, amputation, permanent disfigurement, loss or reduction of any bodily function. And here's something interesting. The initiative also would make it a felony to have someone who is not a physician review a decision made by a physician. We'll see. It's in public comment right now in California, and we'll see if it makes its way onto our ballot and what Californians have to say about that. Regulators in the state of Colorado are issuing licenses for providing psychedelic mushrooms and for planning authorization of the state's first healing centers. Colorado has received applications for at least 15 healing center licenses thus far. And in case you are interested, a Bible that belonged to O.J. Simpson sold at auction for more than $80,000 over the weekend. Simpson's friend and attorney Robert Kardashian Sr. gave him the Living Bible back in the 90s when he was going through legal problems. Ahead of the auction, Kim Kardashian tried to buy the Bible that contains a handwritten message from her father. The Simpson family declined her offer, but again, it was auctioned off for more than $80,000 over the weekend. That's a pretty pricey Bible there. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, the most amazing coffees and teas that you will ever try, worth every extra penny you will pay. It is a boutique coffee shop, but the beans are so fresh, so good. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the website. Take a look at it. They have descriptions about the color of roast, the flavor of coffees and teas on the website, so you know exactly what you're getting. They source it from all women-owned farms, fresh beans, really good business, great people to work with. They always seem to include something a little extra in your package, which is really, really nice. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And just for being a Mark Thompson Show listener, please take advantage of our exclusive discount. You get 10% off your order. The code, the secret super special code, MARKT, no spaces there, MARKT at checkout, MARKT, will get you your discount, 10% off at the end, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Call me a liar. Now what do you call him?
You, sir,
are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
liar, liar. Your pants are on fire.
Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No, no, no.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing here?
Do you have a secret talent?
Isn't anybody but a weed?
It's 100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
And this is their new host. There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected. And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
It is the Mark Thompson Show, and we have returned. And I want to give a special shout out to Brian Reich, who, for $18, puts a contribution toward the show for his very own birthday. Brian writes, "Happy birthday to me today. Can't believe I made it to 72 and in good health. Thanks to you guys helping us understand and cope with this craziness, and bless you all." Brian, happy birthday. I have, where's my balloons? I'm giving him the balloons. Here they are. Celebratory balloons for Brian. Very, very nice. Happy birthday. Hope it's a wonderful day. Thank you for the contribution to the show. And it prompts me to remind everyone the show is indeed crowdfunded. Couldn't do it without you guys. themarkthompsonshow.com. That's where the links to our Patreon and PayPal live. So thank you everyone for contributing. Of course, the super chats and super stickers are open. Happy birthday, Brian, and thank you for contributing to the show. I hope it's a really great birthday for you. All right. I have a Stories from the Sky for you, and here it is, Stories from the Sky.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
No, the headline reads, "It's quite embarrassing. Just China-bound United flight had to turn around when the pilot forgot his own passport." Hey, it happens to all of us, apparently. This happened aboard a United Boeing 787 jetliner from Los Angeles to Shanghai. Had to turn around after it was discovered that one of the pilots took off without a passport. The flight left LAX Saturday, March 22nd, with 257 passengers and 13 crew members on board. It was headed northwest over the Pacific Ocean to China's largest city. About 2 hours into the flight, the plane had to turn around. It was redirected to the city of San Francisco, where it landed at 5 p.m. What a waste of everyone's time. The pilot did not have a passport aboard the plane. According to United, they said in a statement, "We arranged for a new crew to take our customers to the destination that evening. Customers were provided with meal vouchers and compensation." The flight with the new crew took off at 9 p.m., landed in Shanghai about 6 hours behind schedule. It's, it was apparently over the loudspeaker there. The pilot's very frustrated voice came on telling the passengers that he had forgotten his passport. I don't know if a 6-hour delay should have been more compensated than just $30 in meal vouchers, which is what some of the passengers said they got for that. They were also allowed to file compensation claims with the airline. But yeah, one of the passengers said, "How could someone mess up this badly at work?" You would think that they would automatically just have their passport packed in their
It's literally part of their gig.
carry-on. Right. It's like you're bringing your work badge to work, right? You know that you're gonna, you just keep
Well, I
it
have
in your
forgotten
thing.
that.
Yeah. I mean, now I could forget my passport, but the pilot, I don't know. I hold them to a higher standard. Here's a crazy story, Tony, about airline staff that really don't understand medical issues. This mother says, and she made all kinds of previous arrangements. She said that the airline asked her to take her son off a breathing machine before they got underway. Her name is Melissa Sotomayor. She put out this TikTok video, this 10-minute long TikTok video, It's been viewed more than 1.3 million times so far. She's got a little boy who's 2 years old. His name is Noah, and his condition is called medically complex. And he relies on this breathing tube and other devices as well. Can't breathe without it. You can't just disconnect it as the plane takes off. He can't breathe if he doesn't have the ventilator in. She said once we were seated, a male flight attendant approached and he said I needed to take my son off the ventilator and the portable oxygen concentrator because they need to be secured for takeoff. I explained to him, she said, that I could not take my son off of those pieces of equipment because they are keeping him alive. She said she had just flown on United to Tampa with no problem. She had letters from doctors clearing her son to fly and other documentation. So she was prepared and ready, had all her ducks in a row. Then she said, the captain came back and said, I do not feel that your son should be flying. If it's dangerous for him, look at him. She said, there's no problem. My son is medically cleared. She said, I fought for my son in his entire life, and I'm still doing so. Eventually, this family was allowed to continue on the flight, which landed an hour behind schedule because of this whole flap. United Airlines said that, or she said that United called her a few days ago after watching her video, and they apologized, but she said, yeah, their apology
only until they got caught. Yeah, the TikTok video got millions of views, and it's like, we're sorry. God,
she said
they weren't sorry for that.
Sincere, and they didn't offer any compensation or anything else. And she's working to find a lawyer. So here comes a lawsuit. You imagine unhook your son from a ventilator? What? No. If it's a choice of unhooking my son and him dying to take this flight or getting off the plane, we're getting off the plane. Crazy. Yeah. Here's one that happened over the weekend. This is right where that crash happened in Washington, D.C. This kite, someone flying a kite. The kite reportedly made contact with a United flight right near Reagan National Airport. It made contact with the plane as the plane was approaching Reagan National. United Airlines says it is aware of reports that a kite struck United Flight 654, which departed from Houston for Washington, D.C. They said the airline said the aircraft landed safely. The customers deplaned normally. On inspection, there is no damage to the aircraft, so everything's okay there. But it led to some questions about what's going on in the flight path. What are you doing?
Who's stupid enough? Like, the planes come by here, I'm gonna fly a kite really high.
So there's
wants it to happen.
There's this park right across the Potomac on the National Mall, and they had a kite festival on Saturday celebrating cherry blossom season. The rule is that you're not supposed to fly kites in this area because of the danger of low flying aircraft. So there's a rule that you don't fly kites in this zone. But people do it, apparently, because this plane was struck by a kite. Yeah. I mean, in the battle of plane versus kite, I'm picking plane. But still, like, you don't want that. You don't want anything to impede the plane's progress.
I mean, a bird does enough damage to a plane engine sometimes. Right? Like, the bird strikes. Like, a kite? It's like, no. String and plastics and metal. No.
It looks like everything's okay, but don't fly a kite in the low plane path near Reagan. No. They've had enough trouble recently. They don't need you to. United Airlines will soon begin offering Starlink internet services on its regional jets. The airline saying today it has FAA approval, and the first commercial flight of Starlink-equipped aircraft is planned for May. So I guess we won't have to download our movies that we're taking aboard.
It works really good. I've used it on Hawaiian. Hawaiian Airlines has Starlink, and it works phenomenal. It honestly does. Like, no issues at all.
Are you concerned about Starlink at all, getting into your business?
Oh, look, I watched a bunch of podcasts about video games.
Okay. The approval.
But honestly, it works. It on the plane, and it was, absolutely stable and fast the whole time. Wow. I have to say, it was really good.
So you don't lose your internet service in the sky. The approval comes as the Department of Government Efficiency is auditing the FAA for cuts. The head of Doge, billionaire Elon Musk, also owns Starlink, of course. United says they expect to equip more than 300 planes with this technology by the end of the year. So pretty soon, you'll be able to join Tony and surf Starlink, surf the internet connected to Starlink, right?
Yeah, they had like on the Hawaiian Airlines, they had two different servers. One was internet, and the other one was their whole like movie library that you could just access, and you had either or. You could like switch between. It all worked really good.
Did they
Sadly,
make you pay for it?
No, it was free.
Okay.
On Hawaiian Airlines, it was free. Just here you go.
Here's my prediction.
Nothing's free.
It's free now, but it won't always be free.
Well, I mean, they used to charge how much for internet on those planes, right? It was like $10 a minute and shit like that. They
charge you to use their little headphones.
Oh God.
They're charging.
You had to buy
the
proprietary headphones for their own. Whether your regular headphones wouldn't work back in the day. God.
First, they get you used to it, Tony. It's like a
drug dealer.
First, they get you used to it, and then they're like, "Oh, that'll be $5 per half hour."
I have to say, they went backwards because they've been charging for internet.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Here, it's free now." I was like,
"Okay."
Wait a minute,
And that, my friends, is Stories from the Sky.
Dang it! Give me a second.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
Yes, you are. Thank you, Tony. It's another great show tomorrow. Mark Thompson will be back on Wednesday, but tomorrow, David K. Johnston swings by the show, and it's always such a great time talking to him. Also tomorrow, Mark left me a conversation that he had with lawyer and author of Middleman. Also, he's the host of America's Lawyer on YouTube. Mike Papantonio will be here, and that's a great conversation you don't want to miss. He's got a really interesting new crime thriller book that is just been released. So we'll talk to Mike Papantonio as well. So it's a good show. Tony will be here. I'll be here. Keep the home fires burning. That's right.
Substitute teachers are in, but we're pretty cool. But we're cool. We let you throw spit wads and stuff. It's cool.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next on the After Party Live. Tony will put the link in the chat for that. So if you want to join me, always looking for some new subscribers, so head over there. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow here on The Mark Thompson Show. But for now,
Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye, Tony. Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you tomorrow. Oh, shoot.